Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Unqualified podcast, the podcast where two lifelong fans try to make sense of their teams and usually fail. I'm Pat, joined as always by Brendan. How you doing, pal?
I'm doing well, buddy. Good morning.
We got a lot to talk about. NFL schedule came out a few weeks ago. We've been so entrenched with the Knicks. We haven't had time to break that down. We'll break down the Jets schedule, the Jaguars schedule. I see you're rocking the hat today.
Absolutely.
And then we will, of course, get into our disaster of a baseball team.
A little bit of a rough start, my friend.
Yes, yes. But hey, I look at the calendar, it's still May.
That is the wild thing. It is still May. For it to be as long of a season already and as painful as it's been, I still can't believe it's not even June 1st yet. But, it is what it is, my friend. This is the journey of being a Mets fan.
It is. If you guys are not following us, definitely check us out on Instagram at the UQ Podcast, and you can catch full episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And as a reminder, this episode is brought to you by Dr. Arnie Oliveira and the Empowerment Counseling Center. You hear us joke about how this is kind of like therapy for us because being a fan is such an emotional roller coaster, but real therapy can genuinely change lives. And for over a decade, Dr. Oliveira has been helping individuals, couples, and families navigate life's biggest challenges and create lasting positive change. So if you or someone you know needs help, definitely have them reach out to Dr. Arnie at 407-775-2949. Real therapy for real life, and this fan therapy for everything else. So
Absolutely. I love that, bro. Love it.
let's get into it, pal. So the schedules came out a couple weeks ago. It's always like an event now, which is crazy to see. Like it's almost as big as the draft. But you always have the leaks coming out the day or two prior. So you kind of have an idea, of what your team's going to be doing, at least where they're opening and maybe some, holiday games and whatnot. But yeah, it's crazy to see how far it's come.
Well, I mean, I give the NFL credit. I mean, the other leagues, the other professional leagues in this country can learn from the NFL and how the NFL certainly milks what they have, whether it's, how they've switched up the venue with the draft and travel around the country now, and how they've turned that into, essentially, 3-4 day event with everything that goes on. And then to your point, like with the schedule release, I give them credit. They are always figuring out how to keep themselves, right at the very top of the news cycle in sports. And, it's a credit to, what they've built and obviously just the general interest that most of the country has in what the NFL does.
For sure, 100%. So let's start with the Jets first, then we'll get into your Jaguars.
Perfect. Let's do this
Yes.
because I'm going to tell you, because I love Trevor. I'm a fan of Klubnik, or sorry, not ours, yours, your new quarterback.
Don't get it
I'm
twisted, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm like I feel the the passion for what he's bringing to the team, even just in a couple weeks. But I'm looking forward to him playing. But you know what? I don't want to take away. This is your team. Tell me why you think they're going to have a winning record and make the playoffs. Go ahead.
So something I'm happy about is zero primetime games. We don't need to be embarrassed on national television anymore, right? Let us fly under the radar. Sunday, 1 o'clock. Just give me that, tradition, that regimen. Like I'm good. I'm good. And yeah, let's see what happens. I think week one at Tennessee, going up against the old coach in Salah, you don't want to say week one is a must win, but for this coach and for this regime and Aaron Glenn, like I look at it as pretty much a must win because if you carry all those bad vibes you had from last year and you go into this year and lose week one to your former coach, like that's just to me, it's just gonna be so deflating and it's gonna set the team back in terms of like what they're trying to build. Like you need to start like we talked about it. You've heard me talk about it ad nauseum. They need to start stacking W's and just getting that winning vibe and feeling around the building. Do you agree with me or do you look at it differently in terms of week one at Tennessee for the Jets and the importance of that game?
No, I mean, I think for Aaron Glenn as a coach, absolutely right. It's a must win. Obviously, as we go through the coming weeks here, it stacks up not so great for the Jets. And, obviously it's difficult with, the return of your former quarterback, but still at the end of the day, it is a new quarterback walking into the system and you're not sure where you're going to get there. Obviously his, last days between the Seahawks, the Raiders, didn't look so great. But yeah, against Salah, you have to be able to figure out how to walk away with a win in week one.
Yeah. I know, and I've been thinking about this a lot, like, not just for Glenn and the team, but the fan base. You know, how much we've been beaten down these last 15 years with the playoff drought, like and it's just like that here we go again feeling like you don't wanna start off the season like that, especially like, it's scripted perfectly, like, you could see it happening. They lose to their former coach, like last year, week 1, they lost to Rodgers and the Steelers, you know? It couldn't have been scripted more perfectly, and, you know, you could see it happening again, but I just think it's just so important, not only for the regime, for the team, but for the fan base, like, to get that moral boost in week 1. Because, like you said, as you just mentioned, the start is not easy, but let's get into after that. So they got their home opener the following week against the Packers, and then they play 3 of the 4 NFC North teams. They got the Packers, and they're at Detroit, and then they're at Chicago. Now, I hear a lot of talking heads. I see, you know, a lot of Jets content creators, and they're all awesome, and even reporters that cover the team, like, "Oh, they're gonna that's an 0-3 stretch." Why can't they win one of those 3? Am I crazy to think Green Bay, Detroit, Chicago, like, okay, they're good teams, but if they can win the opener and they win one of those 3, you're off to a 2-2 start, and, you know, who knows what happens?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I mean, right, it is the NFL. And I think when you're early in the season, and if you get that momentum of a week one, it's easier to build, right? It's easier to be invested, engaged as a player, right? Nothing is worse to play than I think football when you're a losing team. You know, right? It's easy for the morale to be, essentially in the toilet. And at that point, it's hard to get up for some of these games when you feel like you're not going to be competitive. So Paul, to your point, that first game of the year is just so important that they figure that part out and figure out how to get a game one win. And to your point, right, build momentum, right? This is not baseball, right? It's once a week. And it's not like us as Mets fans where, all right, we get an open day win, but then we can lose the next 5 days in a row. But you need a little bit of momentum, I think, to get that, one of those 3 games. It is a tough stretch. I think if in that setup there, if you were going to get any, I think it would be the Packers out of those 3 games that you look at. And I could see it, if they are able to capture game one, I think they can get to a 2-2
Man,
start. I think
you're
they'll be
saying
competitive.
they could be 2 and 0 because
Well,
Packers
yeah,
is
yeah,
week
I guess,
2.
yeah. I mean,
I mean, wow, I
yes.
would
Yeah.
how ecstatic we would be like, jumping out of our shoes here, like, that would be incredible.
Well, yeah, especially I think coming off of, I think in this area, where it's been a rough year for the Mets. The Knicks, having a little bit of that, catching fire, or at least, bringing that community together. And like you've right, I've seen all this past week, like those Jet memes about, if the Jets could get some type of run like the Knicks, or excuse me, like the Knicks, what would that look like? And yeah, I think there's again, I think there's a possibility of a 2-0 start just because early in the year teams are not who they're going to be come November, December. They're still
100%.
figuring things out. And we live in a different world from 15 years ago where practices, the OTAs, everything looks different. Preseason football looks different. These guys don't get a lot of true physical reps. It's all mental. But at the end of the day, right, you need to get smacked, you need to get hit, you need that contact to get you engaged and mentally focused on what happens. So man, again, I think a little bit of momentum out of week one, it's possible to steal that second week.
It's crazy now, like, to your point, the first couple weeks of the season are basically extended preseason times when you think about it, like, in terms of the reps and the mental part of the game, so that's crazy. Okay, so we are on the same page here. We could see them starting 2 and 2. They win week 1, and then they win one of those next 3, and then they host the Browns, a team they beat last year, and this is at MetLife Stadium, so they could be heading into that game 2 and 2, and you know, maybe it's the rose-colored glasses. They can win that. They could be 3 and 2, you know? And then they gotta go to Foxborough. They have a couple they go to Foxborough, then they host the Dolphins, split those games maybe. So you're looking at I mean, obviously, you don't expect to win at Foxborough. They could beat the Dolphins. They should beat the Dolphins,
Yeah.
right? You would think.
I mean, I don't care. I mean, right? Yeah, the Patriots got to the Super Bowl last year. I still don't think they're a great team or a good
Yeah,
team. And
I
it's well,
know.
sorry, they're a
I
good
know how you
team,
feel
but
about them.
they're beatable for
Yeah,
sure. I mean,
but
they're probably going to have a 7-win season this year. The Patriots.
isn't that funny? Like, nobody everyone is really predicting that in terms of the down year, and it makes sense, the Super Bowl loser, obviously,
Yeah.
so
I
that's
mean, look, the
gonna
Super Bowl loser is always a bad thing, right? It's that is one consistent thing. Teams don't seem to bounce back well. Now they're going to get a first place schedule, not ideal for them. They open up, and I don't know why the NFL did this to us. Like, why the Super Bowl was so bad. Like, I did not. I mean, outside of watching the Patriots just get beat
yeah,
down physically, that Super Bowl was rough to watch.
no drama, it wasn't
And
compelling or competitive, really.
No, it really wasn't, and, and the thing is like this, not to get so sidetracked here, but in that Super Bowl, to me, it was one of those things where Seahawks were never worried about losing that game going into it, and they were gonna just be consistent, they were gonna be conservative, they were never gonna give them a chance, and they really didn't. I know there was a couple spots where it could have been close, but, like, Drake clearly is not at that level yet. Yes, it was a nice run, but when you go back to that the playoff stretch running into the Super Bowl, I mean, how many times did that dude get hit? How many times did he get sacked? I mean, they were, at least in my opinion, winning in spite of maybe him and that offensive line a bit. And what happened to our boy there is going to die for that quarterback. And literally, he was dying on the field, just getting beat by everybody. But all right, I know I'm sidetracked here, but I wouldn't look at the Patriots as a game. Like the Jets couldn't win, and again, like they had a great draft, and at the end of the day, Aaron Glenn desperately needed that. Aaron Glenn desperately needs to get off to a solid start this year to give himself a chance to get through this season. At the end of the day, right? Like I know it's a QB driven league. Can Geno do enough? You got some nice talent now on the offensive side of the ball. You have some like real weapons, and you can run it. Like he just has to be your Trent Dilfer from 25 years ago.
The thing I'm not worried about with Gino is his ability to take chances and push the ball down the field. Like, we had a quarterback last year with Fields who just he was scared to throw it. It was we got 0 from the quarterback position. Then when Brady Cook came in, I mean, it was basically over. But so I know he's gonna throw his share of interceptions, but I think, the upside there is gonna be the big play and the potential for that, which we
Yeah.
haven't had.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Fields is like it feels like a shame in a sense, but I do see like sometimes quarterbacks like Fields never develop to the degree they should just because they get lost in their athleticism, I think in a lot of ways, allowing that to be their bailout. I mean, and not to pick on say Lamar. Lamar has obviously had really strong seasons, obviously a lot of talent, but they just can't, right? They just can't. It's just not getting over the top. And, I think there's some times where, when the athleticism just kind of sours the quarterback abilities, where I always thought like when you took a step back, like all around, that's why I still would always look at Aaron Rodgers being like an all time great, right? Like he had a lot of athleticism, especially in the early days, could run, scramble, take off, but he was always looking to throw the ball downfield first,
Yep.
where quarterbacks like that get lost.
And when
So,
push came to shove, he was able to stand in the pocket and make the tough throws when
yeah,
it
or it,
mattered. And you have to at some point, you gotta do that, no
yeah.
matter how athletic you are.
I mean, that's why, like, when I see Trevor finally turn the corner, that's why I'm like, dude's just going to light it up the next 10 years, but whatever.
Hey,
I won't talk
you
about
you
that just
got you
yet.
got a lot to look forward to here, pal, with your team. We'll get into that in a few minutes. So, okay, are you on board now? They're 4-3. We'll give them the loss at Foxborough, and then they come back home and they beat the Dolphins. So they're 4-3. Are you on board with that? Or you gonna give them a win in Foxborough?
So I think, the Browns are a trap game.
Mm,
So I think they
that's
can win
fair.
in Foxborough, but I think the Browns ends up being your trap game, right? Because there is some inconsistency. There is some of that play. Yes, it is a home game coming off of two what would be very tough road games. But I would say, again, I think it's easy for me as a non-fan. I don't have the rose-colored glasses, but I think there is a good chance they drop that one and do beat the Pats. So that's kind of
Okay.
where I sit.
Okay. So and then they beat the Dolphins?
Yep, they beat the Dolphins
Okay, so
four
that would
three,
make it
four and
still
three in
4 and
my
3. You just
yeah.
have a different path.
Yeah,
You have a
yeah,
different path,
exactly.
4 and 3. Okay.
Yeah.
So then at 4 and 3, they go Oh, actually, they host the Raiders, and could this be Mendoza? We don't know. We'll see. I mean, I think there's a good chance it could be Mendoza on, November 1st. I mean,
Yeah, I think Mendoza has to be playing at that point. It's not like Mendoza, he had his time like in college, right? It's not like he's a guy with 10 starts, trying to now make it in the NFL. So I think you do get Mendoza, and I think the that will be a f- a competitive game, but a funny one in the sense that Gino going up against the Raiders for me, at least
yeah.
personally looking at it.
Yeah, it's gonna have a little bit of juice, I feel like, going into that week for sure. But I feel like even if it's Mendoza or if it's still Kirk Cousins, we beat Kirk Cousins last year with the Falcons, so I feel good about them. Listen to me, I feel good about them winning this game to
Of
get
course, you
to.
feel good. Do you know why you feel good? It's not June 1st yet. That's why you
Right.
feel good.
You're right, you're right. Okay, so we have them at 5-3, then they gotta go to Arrowhead. We'll pencil that in for a loss. Okay, I'm fine with that. They're 5-4, okay? Then they're coming back home to face the Bills. Big divisional matchup. It's been tough, man, against the Bills. They won a few times against them in the Salah area at home, which those wins kinda came out of nowhere, and they really beat up Josh Allen, and you really thought, like, something was happening here, like, this team was, like, turning a corner, and then they could never build off those wins. So it's going to be a tough spot. I think I don't see them winning this game. Although I do think they keep it really competitive based on what happened last year and getting embarrassed in week 2. I think it was like 30-10. So I think they drop this game. It's competitive. They go to 5-5, and we're looking at this regime like, okay, like maybe we have something here.
So, can I ask you a question about that game, though? Is it, like, all right, to your point, it's the week before on the road against the Chiefs, which can be
Yeah,
obviously an
that's rough.
emotional game, right? Like you go in there, you want, especially at that point, if all things are true and what we're saying, right? They have a winning record. Obviously, there's opportunity for playoffs at that point if you're, over 500 halfway through the year. So I guess, and I agree with you. I think they're going to lose. I think my thoughts might be different than yours. Are you saying they will lose just because your fiance is a Bills fan? Is this the real reason? Is this like kind of like keeping the peace?
Well, they do play him again to end the season, so we haven't
That's
gotten
true.
there. It's hard to feel confident about those games, pal. They have been non-competitive for the most part when they play Buffalo, so I'm hoping for the best. So do you agree there that they're 5-5 after this Bills game?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. So then it's a couple of road games. They're at the Chargers, and then they're at Miami before their bye. Again, Chargers is gonna be a tough spot going across country. I could see him pulling that out, maybe. You sound confident. You know what? It's weird, man. Like, we know Herbert's a good quarterback, but, like, can you count on him? Like, it's we kinda talked about
Yeah.
it with CJ Stroud last week, although Herbert has kind of, like, leveled off and, like, he's reliable to the point where Stroud, like, kinda took a decline last year, so but
I think with like Herbert, there's some similarities to Trevor, right? The talent
here
is
we go.
there. Well, I'm just saying, right? Like I mean, you look at Trevor, you look at Herbert, you clearly see two guys with a lot of talent, right? Like
You're the guy that creates the meme, like, build the perfect quarterback, and it's all parts of Trevor.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think that's fair. That's fair to say.
Yes.
But I would look at those two quarterbacks and say they have clearly top 10, maybe top 5 type QB talent, but just the lack the consistency. And where I think, as I head into this year, I'd be more optimistic where Trevor is. Can we see Trevor, or excuse me, Herbert kind of figure that part out and become a little bit more consistent? I do think, under their coaching staff, I think he's going to continue to grow and develop in that way, and that's where he needs to be. He needs to be a guy they can lean on. But I would look at this game and West Coast. And I
Tough
love
spot. It's a
particularly the
tough
West.
spot.
Yeah, it's a tough spot, and especially coming off Chiefs, Bills.
Yeah. I
That's
think
that's a tough stretch of games.
this is most likely gonna be a 3-game losing streak for them, but I think they bounce back at Miami before the bye to get to 6-6, and I would be very happy about that if you go into the bye 6-6 because at least we go back to what I talked about. You're in the graphic. You're in the hunt. You're in the picture. You're not
Yes,
just,
yeah.
off somewhere else, like, in October, and it's like, ugh. So, I'd be happy about that, okay. So, we both have them 6 and 6 at the bye, which I don't know, are we crazy? Like, I don't know.
Well, I think I think if you get consistency out of Gino, right? Like,
Yeah, I know.
that's all you ask him for. Just ask him not to do too much. There's enough talent now on that offense. I think, all around. They had a really good draft. They could put out some pieces out there where at some point, like I don't think it's unreasonable for them to be competitive. I mean, it's not like we're saying they're going to be 11-1 at this point. 6-6, you're still a very it's considered a very average team, but, I
Take
I
it.
think with the way yeah, no, but I think the way your schedule sets up, again, there's a couple tough stretches, but I do think, like, what's mixed in between, gives the Bills or excuse me, sorry, because I'm looking at the schedule here, I apologize, but gives the Jets an opportunity to put themselves in a position where, you hit that bye week going into mid-December, which
Yeah,
is
it's
wild
late.
because how late the bye is.
I know.
It's a
I don't
great
like
time
that.
to get it, and, for me, I think there's a good chance that, you could be 6-6 at that point, because that's I mean, right, it's at the end of the day, this is what he's gonna need to save his job. He can't be going into that bye week with only 3 wins, because at that point, he's not gonna be there, and, Klubnik is your quarterback the rest of the way, which maybe is not the worst things in some ways, but, I would be looking at that way, so
Okay.
they need these wins.
Yep, for sure. Okay, so they come out to bye, they host Denver, which obviously not a tough game, but we are home. It is December, which I can't remember the last like weather game that the Jets had at home, like where there was true elements like affecting the game, and it just felt like it was an important game. I can't even remember. And this could be the closest thing we get to it. Coming off the bye, December, the Broncos will obviously probably have a winning record. The Jets will be fighting for their
You said
lives at 6 and
obviously?
6.
The Broncos ain't a good team?
No,
No.
you don't see 'em with a
Stop
win.
it. Stop it.
They'll be like 7-5, 8-4 probably at this
Yeah,
point, something like that.
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I think if you're a Broncos fan, you can't be expecting to be in that same place as you were last year, but that's
yeah,
just my thoughts.
yeah. Do you give them a chance in this game?
Yes, coming off a bye week, feeling good about themselves. Don't mind my dog here. Feeling good about themselves. Yeah, I think it could be a competitive game, right? Like I'm sorry, I'm not sold on, Knicks. I'm not sold on the Broncos in general. I do think what you see in last year between the Broncos and Pats, I don't want to call it fluke because that's not fair, but I think it's just a perfect storm where those teams were able to kind of break through. But I do see this as, a really type of a toss-up game.
Yeah, I agree that it's gonna be a toss-up game. I think I'm gonna put it out here now. I think this is gonna be Glenn's signature win of the season. I think
This guy.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have a hot Broncos team coming in December. Jets coming off the bye, knowing they need to win to keep the playoff hopes alive. And they're at home. The crowd's gonna be pumped. It's gonna be the first glimpse we have of like playoff football, which we haven't had in forever. But it's gonna have that feel. And I can see him, gutting out a tough win here. Obviously, you know me, pal. I'm gonna keep the rose-colored glasses on. But hey, they go to
Of course you
7 and
are.
s they go to 7 and 6, and we are feeling as good as we've ever felt in a long time, because then they gotta go to
Yeah.
Arizona
I
after that.
I will say I would look at them dropping that game, for me personally. I think because even though it's at home, the hype, right? Like, it's the losing feelings in that organization been there for so long.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's a close game. I think they
Yep.
play well, but I do think at some points it'd be one of those games where at some points they do come up flat, kind of like where I'm
Yeah.
thinking that Browns game is a trap. Not that this would be a trap game, but this is also when you're not used to being in the hunt, you're not used to playing that competitive December football, which it's been a while. I think this is easy in terms not easy, but in a way this could end in a spot where you do see that loss. So I would say 6-7, but I think we both are going to give the Jets the Cardinals game because
So here's
poor
here's
Cardinals.
my thinking, pal. You talked about
No,
the
come
trap.
on,
No,
you don't.
listen. You
No, you're
talked
not
about
the
the trap
Cardinals.
game because I have them beating the Browns, but
It's 5 days before Christmas.
I've
The
seen it
Cardinals season is
too
way over.
I've seen it too
Stop it.
much, man. I've seen it too much, the big letdown, because in my mind, I see him gutting out a win against the Broncos and all the energy and emotion, and then they go cross country and just lay an egg. And I've seen it dozens of times. So we're both gonna say 7 and 7, but we both
Yeah.
got there differently.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair, right? Like, I could understand what you're saying 'cause it's another trap game to me, because I think they lose to the Broncos, they're into it, and at that point, like, the Cardinals are gonna be bad. It's 5 days before Christmas. Cardinal players are figuring out where they're gonna go on vacation. They just wanna get through the last month of the season healthy, just because, they're demoralized. So that, to me, I can't see the Jets losing that game, but yeah, but yeah, we're in the same spot, 7 and 7.
7 and 7.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they're back home for the Pats 2 days after Christmas. This is a tough one because we both have them sweeping the Dolphins and then losing the first game in Foxborough and then losing the first game. Wait, you said they were going to lose to the
I
Bills?
I I have, no, I have them losing to the Bills in the first one. I have them beating the Patriots,
Right, right,
the
right,
first
right.
your first
Okay.
go around. So I think, when I look at it for me, like for the Jets this year, I think they sweep the Dolphins. I think they get swept by the Bills. I think they split the Pats.
Okay. So then you have them losing this one at
Yep.
home.
Yep.
To go to 7 and 8. And yeah, I feel like this is gonna be similar to the Denver game. The energy and the intensity is gonna be up. We're at home. Yeah. No, I think I'm gonna agree with you in that they're gonna split. We just have them winning different games that they're gonna split with the Pats. So I'm gonna give them a win here to go to 8 and 7 with 2 games left in the season, which sign me up right now. Yeah, sign me up. And then the final home game is the week after the Pats game. They host the Minnesota Vikings on January 3rd. What's that team going to look like with Kyler Murray and JJ
Did
McCarthy?
you I don't know if you saw the clip maybe, today or yesterday of Murray and JJ giving their thoughts, like, on the QB competition. Murray gives, like, the most polished professional answer there is, and, JJ gives a very young quarterback response where, Murray keeps it positive, talking about, like, it's a healthy competition, trying to help support each other. He's the veteran trying to help out the young QB. And JJ is like, "Well, it's like 2 kids in the classroom just on the opposite sides of the classroom." It was like a weird response, and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Guy, at some point, you gotta turn the corner and become professional." Now you're in, like, what, 3rd year?
yeah,
So, I'm gonna say there's a good chance the Vikings are a mess. I think that's a Jet win. So, from my perspective, I think at that point, I'm looking at Jets going into the final game of the season at 8 and 8. You get to that point last week of the year. I don't know what it looks like in terms of, playoff opportunity in that last week if the win gets them in. I know where we are recently, 9 and 8, maybe doesn't quite get you there.
right.
But obviously, if you're going into the last week against the Bills at 8 and 8, I'm sure Jets fans are happy because
Yeah,
it's been a rough ride. I'm sure Aaron Glenn happy because he's still going to have a job and he can continue to build on what he's trying to do with the Jets. And again, to me, if you go into the Bills game at 8 and 8, that is as good of a season as you possibly could ask for at this point within reason.
yeah,
And that at that point, right, it's a coin flip, right? You're getting the Bills at home. The Jets are gonna either way, they're playoff contention or not. They're showing up because they want to have a winning record. It just, do the Bills need the game for whatever reason? And that's why I think really determines an 8 and
yeah.
9 or 9 and 8 season.
That is the big question. Yeah, I'll have them. They'll beat the Vikings, I'll say, and I'll have them going into that Bills game 9 and 7, and probably putting up a tough fight, but ultimately not coming out on top and finishing 9 and 8. And like you said, is that going to be enough to you? Well, you ultimately will have them going 8 and 9 if because you said they'll get swept by the Bills. So
Yeah, and I think it just, again, right, as you're getting down to it, the difference now, say where we are with a 17 playoff versus six team, right? That bye week is everything. I think it's going to be competitive, especially at the top of the AFC. I think there is going to be a need, right? There may not be, right? Like again, we don't know until we get there, of course. But to me, if the Bills need it, of course, I think that's a Jets win. or excuse me, a Bills win. I apologize. A Bills win puts the Jets at 8-9. I think that is, from where you've been, a great season where you can watch competitive football from start to finish. I mean, you and I, our teams are, over the last like almost 3 decades, have been some of the worst football teams, or that we've put out, on an NFL field for, over the course of that time. We've been bad. So if we're getting a full season, that's great. Even like me last year, it still felt a little bit out of nowhere to have a team that just went on a run to close out the season strong and, get ourselves back into the postseason. It feels like they sneak up on you. But I do think, and again, not that I dislike Aaron Glenn. I want it to work out for him. I know he's that former Jet returning home. Everything is going to be, in those first few weeks of the season, can we just keep this on track and not fall into like that 1-4 type hole?
Last year, 0-7. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
s-
But
so
yeah, it's promising. It's hopeful. I feel, regardless of whether they sneak into the playoffs or not, you having them at 8-9, me having them 9-8, they could win 7. What do you think? Do they have a ceiling of could they win 10 games, or is that completely out of the realm?
I think it's a possible, sure, right? Like
There's
it's
some rough
not,
stretches though that I think kind of
yeah.
prevent that.
I mean, the 2-3 game stretches where you're playing some, what are supposed to be really good football teams. But I do think for like New York football in general, between the Jets and the Giants, of course, got my Giants here for my daughter, and she's a Giants fan. I would say like it's should be a feel good type season. I think the Jets have a little bit more optimism going in than say maybe where the Giants are, because right, there are some key players that they need to get back, and clearly people get stupid and allow politics to sour locker rooms. That I don't do that. Nobody should do that. Don't be stupid. Don't let somebody's political differences like split you apart. Like, this is what drives me nuts in this country, at least in the world we live in. But I think of the two teams, Jets coming off that draft, looking at the type of schedule they have, feel like they're building momentum and that type of positive energy. I think the Jet fans, much like the Giants and any team in this the greater New York City area, when it's good, it's good, right? Like, they are going to come out, support, kind of provide that energy. And for an organization that feels like it's been dormant for so many years now, to me, I would look at this and be, if I'm a Jet fan, I would be as excited as I've been in a very long time, and looking forward to, what this can be when we're 2-3 years down the road. How competitive can we be as a team? Granted, it's always going to come back to getting yourself the right quarterback. I hope Klubnik is your guy at the end of the day, another Clemson quarterback, which would be cool to see. But I think this could be a very positive year for, the Jets fans, organization, and, of course, really for Glenn, who needs it.
From your lips to God's ears, pal.
Go to DraftKings. You got over 5.5 is -120, over 6.5 +140. I'd say take that bet, because I think this is a 7 win team here. I would, if I was somebody who had that desire to gamble. I'm not saying I am, not saying I'm not, but I would look at that and be like, that feels, +140 over 6.5 feels like that could be a very solid bet.
It's your betting advice from Brendan. Do with it what you wish. It's time to pivot over to your team, pal. And do
Are you wait? Are you gonna make fun of our coach
Duval.
Duval? That was, you know what? I'm glad that he had that entrance.
Yeah.
You looked at him like, oh my god, this guy is hateable. He can't even get that right out of the gate. But he showed up, turned Trevor Lawrence into, I don't know, maybe the greatest quarterback in the league going forward. Possibly. I've ordered my grill. I'm just waiting for it to come in for football season so I could wear it. I'm excited.
Okay. So going into this season, trying to build upon the success you had last year with the new coach, with Trevor taking another step. As a Jags fan, what is your expectation this season, and what would you consider to be a successful season in year 2 of the Cohen era?
I think building off of last year is getting that a win in the playoffs, right? Like, I love the Jaguars. I know we've took some hits during the offseason in terms of, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and a few key players that we've lost, which I think will be tough to backfill. And we were we were one of those teams that were a little bit strapped on cash because of where our payroll was going into this new year. So again, it handcuffed us a bit. Now, when I look ahead to this year, one thing I would like, right? We're getting close. We're getting close to Monday here. What I would like is for our GM, who's a young gun, and I think he's aggressive and wants to go for it. I am good if we try to go get AJ Brown. And I do think we could provide that package that makes it palatable for them to take our offer. I mean, clearly we've been wanting to dump Thomas. And, again, that's one thing I haven't understood. Because again, like in his rookie year, I mean, he's only 2 years in, but his rookie year showed like those flashes of
Yeah.
like why he was
It's
a
gotta
pretty
be
high
something
pick.
behind the scenes, right? You would
Yeah,
think? Yeah.
for sure. And sometimes I get it. You need to be maybe a player like him with his skill set would be better suited for a different organization today, right? Because the Jags are much like your Jets trying to build our way, right? We're trying to become one of those teams that consistently are good at football, right? That's all we
Yeah.
want. We just want to be competitive consistently. And,
I
the
feel like you're
Eagles,
set up for it, I feel like, with the coach and the quarterback, and I know I've said it before, but yeah, I feel like
yeah,
yeah.
and I think that includes our GM too. So I think we have that line from GM to QB that sets us up well now going forward. So and I don't look at obviously it's not going to be just Brian Thomas, right? We're going to have to give a high draft pick as well. But to me, high draft pick, our receiver for AJ, I think that is a great deal for the Eagles if they want to take it. And, to me, I think Brian could fit in better with his skill set with the Eagles and being, we'll say, in a more professional, I don't know why professional is the right word, but more established locker room, front office. You're going to show up. You're going to play football at a high level. And to me, with his skill set, I think he could fit in well. And I think the Eagles could see that with him and a high draft pick. It's a good exchange because I think where they are with Brown, it's broken.
There's some teams with the culture in the locker room that you can just plug them in regardless of their past or their how difficult they are, and you have the veterans and you have the culture. I know we overuse that word, but yeah, to your point, I could see that happening for sure. It's gonna be interesting. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I look at it. I'm going to be, optimistic, rose-colored glasses. I think AJ is going to be a Jaguar. Hopefully I'm not saying that, and like, got to look and see if there are any other deals. But I'm going to be optimistic that we could give what we could give the Eagles. That's going to set us up, and I think our GM, our head coach, are going to want to get him that target, and then you mix him in what we had last year. Because really, Brian wasn't much of a factor. I think we are going to be. I don't get crazy, but we're going to be pretty damn dominant on offense this year. I think we have the right type of running game that can mix well with what Trevor can do. Obviously, in the draft, we went big, right? We're gonna follow suit with the Rams. We're gonna have we're gonna throw out the big men, three tight ends,
Yeah.
guys who could block, guys who could catch. We're gonna run that ball, and I think we're gonna put Trevor in the position where he hasn't been before of having that extra split second or two to make those throws because I don't care. I know I'm a fan. I don't care what anybody says. You watch him place the ball and some of the ones where he hits and even just misses. The arm talent on him is spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a little bit up top and, psychologically he needs to keep maturing there. But also I think with the right staff, the right front office around him and what they're building, I think offensively, we're going to look way more dominant this year. We're going to have some challenges on defense, but I think as I roll into this year as a Jags fan, you know what? At least I'm going to be watching exciting football. I'm going to be watching a
Yeah.
team that maybe looks a little bit like those Brunell, Jimmy, Keenan, Fred type of offense where we are able to score and keep ourselves in games, win games, and have a really good season.
The one thing I do agree with you there. The one thing I'm gonna be interested to see is with this coach going into a second year, and now with the league having a full year of tape on his scheme and the plays that they like to run, how is he gonna adjust now?
Yeah.
Because I feel like
Yeah.
that's what separates the good coaches from the great ones. How is he gonna adjust the scheme and how is it gonna develop? And kind of tailor it more to Trevor's strengths, what he liked last year, what he didn't like. So that's going to be to me very critical in terms of, you said like surrounding Trevor with the right people. Like we will know, I think, after the season if Cohen is that guy. He had a great first year.
So, I have my love for running backs. Even in high school, I had my Al Bundy game. I'm a fan of Tootin. I'm optimistic, hopeful. He is our lead back. I think in at least what I've seen, what we're building towards as far as what the Jaguars going to look like. I think he's the right type of running back that will fit the scheme a little bit better this year. I'll miss ETN, of course, and how versatile he is, but where we're going to me, Tootin, obviously the combination with Rodriguez, I think we'd be in a pretty good spot. And, again, I love where our tight ends are. I'm a big Brenton Strange fan. Hopefully our boy Nate Dogg could show up and be our future Gronk. But I know that's a bit of a stretch. But if you think about like the receivers that we had last year, Jacoby, Parker Washington, obviously, you sprinkle in a little bit of Travis Hunter and his versatility on offense will make us dynamic. I think again, it just comes back to can the Jags figure it out how to get AJ on this team?
Yep. So let's dive into the schedule here because that's what we want to do is break this down. That your team opens up at home against the Browns Sunday, September 13th, 1 o'clock. It's always more exciting when your team opens up at home. It's just that energy and that feeling. Are
And
Jags fans
against the
going to show
Browns,
up and show out for this?
I mean, it's going to be fun. All right. I look forward to next year too, like, the 27 season, so I can come back to Orlando and watch some
There you
games in
go.
Orlando. But no, I think they're going to be pumped up, right? You get to your point. There's nothing like true opening day, that opening Sunday in the NFL when you're at home. You get the Brownies. Obviously, the Brownies have their struggles, their challenges. Miles, is a threat always when he's on the field and, hoping your quarterback doesn't take the wrong hit. But I think it's a great way for us to open up the season against the Browns and, show who we're going to be as a team.
So we're on the same page there. They start 1-0. Then they got to go to Denver week 2. Now, I know they beat the Broncos last year
They
in
did.
Denver, and that was really maybe the biggest statement of the season. I want to say to
Hmm.
that point for Cohen and Lawrence, that was a really impressive win on the road. Now, pal, I'm gonna say, I think Denver maybe has a little chip on their shoulder after that last year, and they win a close game. So I'm gonna say a 1-1 start for your team.
Fair. Broncos are not a good team. Okay. I'm just going to tell you at the end of the day, they're not a terrible team, a 9-8 type team. Let's be honest. And to me,
So they're
uh,
Jets type team.
yes, they're a Jets type team.
Okay.
And, I don't want Bronco fans to start feeling like, they have something after last year. You don't. Mr. Manning's not walking through that door. Stop it.
Don't get me
So
started on him.
2-0 is where, for the first 2 weeks. And I'm pretty sure we're going to differ on our wins and losses here. But you know what? We still got 15 more weeks to get through. Let's
Yeah.
see where we
Yep.
are. But I'm a
Okay.
2-0 right now.
Yep. Week 3, you host the Patriots.
We will smack them. I can't wait to watch Drake get hit a bunch of times in the pocket. It's not going to look much different.
Yep.
That offensive line,
Hey,
3-0.
hey, you do me a favor, you win that game for my team. I'd love that.
Yeah, look, I'm helping the Jets out. At the end of the
Yep.
day, I'm trying to help out the Jet fan.
I see the Jags winning that game at home. They go to 2-1. You got them at 3-0 to this point. Okay, then they go to Cincinnati. They go to Cincinnati to start the month of October. And we don't know what the Bengals are going to look like at that point. Obviously, we know they're going to have a good offense. We have no idea what the defense is going to look like. It's always a train wreck, I feel like, these last few years. I think this is going to be a real shootout. I could see it really being like 40-37, something like that. Crazy. One of those crazy games you get early in the year where it's like you see the update come through and you're like, what is happening in this?
Yeah, this game. So I'm still bitter about this game last year. This to me, like this is one of those games that right? Because like the Jags were still in that top seed contention at the end of the year. This was a game that cost them. This was inexcusable last year because again, you don't like to see anybody get hurt. I'm a Burrow fan, but they knocked Burrow out of the game early, and I'll be honest. Trevor was not great. I felt like some of the play calling wasn't great, but also to at the end, at the same time, I feel like this is one where we do get bit just because we haven't last couple times out to Cincinnati have not done well. We've kind of lost that kitty battle. So to me, this would be a spot that we would drop, and I could see us dropping going to 3-1 after that one.
Okay. I'm gonna give you a win there. I think to your point about last year, much like with Denver in week 2, you guys have that chip on your shoulder for this one.
Yeah,
So we're
yeah,
both at
fair.
3 and we're both at 3 and 1 here. And then you got a
Yeah,
couple in London. And you gotta go to London for
couple
2
and
games. So you got the Eagles and then the Texans, back-to-back weeks in London. I'm gonna give you an L for the Eagles, pal. I think I don't know. I think obviously, it's a tough spot for both teams traveling internationally there. I think the Jaguars are used to it more, obviously. That's why I think the Eagles win a very tight game, but then you bounce back against the Texans the following week. You got your legs back under you. So,
yeah.
I'm saying
I'm there.
yep, 4 and 2 at
Yeah,
this
I'm there
point.
with you. Yeah, I'm there with you in a split in London. The Jags, they they're used to it. I mean, truly, I mean, right? Like this is a second home for the Jags. They're been playing the game there every year for a while now. And then they bumped it up to 2 weeks. And for us, I hate this. I mean, as a fan, like wanting your team to be competitive and have a chance, I feel like doing this to the organization, and I understand what Shad's trying to do as the owner, trying to build that brand awareness. And yeah, it's cool that they get to play in London, but I think from like a competitive standpoint, this puts us in such a tough spot, especially if we're playing a couple weeks in a row. And I think when I look at this, the Eagles get the Rams the week before, which is probably not an easy game, but they're at home, probably something. I could see the game that they do win, and then they travel. Out there, the Jags are in Cincy, and then the next week and next couple weeks in London. I think mentally it's going to be tough for them to be on good footing, to your point, in week one, and that's where I think the second week, the back half of the trip helps them because they're established, they're on London time, they're used to it, and that's where I think going into the bye week, you're looking at like essentially a 4-2 start to the
Yep.
season.
Yep. We are on the same page there. I think honestly, like you have a little bit of an advantage in terms of like, okay, if you had to go to Houston to play that Texans game right after London, like you're still in London. You can get your bearings.
Well, yeah,
So I think
yeah.
that's obviously a good thing. And we both see him like kind of recalibrating after that Eagles game. And we don't know. Like the NFL is crazy. They can win both of these games. I feel like but we're trying to be fair here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to look at it realistic. No,
I
I'm
know.
I'm trying to be realistic. I'm
I
high
know.
on the team, of course,
Yes.
but it is a tough. I mean, to go play the Bengals, which to your point is probably going to be a little bit of an up and down game, right? You're traveling there, then you have to get out to London. It's and then you got to you then have to settle into what comes with the London games as is, right? All the media, all the hype. Obviously, it's a cool experience. I appreciate the international games just because I appreciate it for the international fans. I think it's great for wherever for the Aussies that they're getting a game, right? For the games that happen in Europe between Paris, Germany, England. It's cool to see those fan bases have the opportunity for good football. And I think when I look at that game, the first one, Jags Eagles, and even the Texans game, at least we're giving them finally some good games
Right.
to watch with solid teams or teams you expect to be solid at that point. But yeah, I'm with you. I think 4-2 is the reality. Come home for the bye week, and then they're set up for a home game against the Colts.
And yes, after the bye, you got the Colts coming to Jacksonville on November 1st in one
Shout
of the
out.
great one of the
Hold on.
greatest rivalries of our generation.
Yes. Shout out to our friend Elwood, who was a fan of us, in the first iteration of when we tried doing this, a Colts fan. This goes back to, I think, the beginning, right? The early Luck days. That's how far
Oh, man,
that goes
yeah.
back with Elwood and the Colts.
Yeah, no, even Manning,
Yeah.
Peyton.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we met, like, around 2009, and that's kinda when we got into starting up our first little, radio show, and Elwood was our caller every time without fail.
Yep. Without fail.
Shout out to Elwood.
Shout out to Elwood.
So, you're gonna get a Colts team, we think It's gonna have Daniel Jones. We think he's gonna be healthy. We're assuming. It's really weird. It's really weird to see or kind of project what this Colts team is gonna be because they got off such a great start last year, and then they were kinda like, "Okay, are they for real?" Then Jones gets hurt, and it's like they take a nosedive. Philip Rivers comes.
Jeez.
Man, I
Got to
loved it.
get those kids them benefits.
I was here for it, man. I was locked into him. It was such a weird, funny, cool story. I don't know.
Amazing story, but I think this is probably the real problem when you think about what Philip did last year. Philip was good. Philip was really good considering what, like, was
Man.
he 44, I think?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he hadn't played in
Oh
almost
my
5
gosh.
years, and I think that's important because I know I've heard Brady talk about this, but the quarterback play, how watered down the quarterback play has become in the NFL. And that is the part that is wild to me because I think, maybe this is just a stretch, and it probably is, the turn in terms of where the QBs are. But from the 2000s, to the early 2020s, like that 20 plus year stretch, I mean, the real skill set we've seen at the QB position between Brady, Manning, Rodgers, et cetera, Breeze, Rivers, Roethlisberger, right? Like it was just a different level compared to where we are today. And, that part makes me a little bit sad that it does look like that. I just wanted to say that because Philip was great, and there is absolutely no reason why he should have been that great, all things considered, coming back at that point in his life.
100%. Yeah. It's a different era, pal. It's a little sad when you think about it. We had so many great quarterbacks we grew up watching and not to say there aren't great quarterbacks now, but it's different. It's just a different
Different.
time. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So I think we both are gonna have them winning this game out of
Yeah.
the
Easily
bye.
Jags by 30. Jags by 30.
Okay, so they go to 5-2, and then they got a short week turnaround to go to Baltimore. I think this is gonna be a very tough spot. I know
Oh,
as
yeah.
the fan, you're gonna say I mean, I definitely think it's gonna be a competitive game. The Thursday night games are always just so weird and hard to predict, but I
And
think
it
the
sucks when
Ravens
you're the road team. It
exactly, I was just
sucks
gonna
when you're
say,
the
the
road team.
Ravens being at home on that short week, I gotta see who they play before the Ravens, but maybe you can look that up real quick. Yeah, so I'm gonna give the Jags an L here to go to 5-3, but then they bounce back against the Titans the next week to go to 6-3. What
Yeah.
do you
So
think, buddy?
yeah, I agree with you. I think that's where they are after those two games. So, to your point about the Ravens coming up, both teams obviously coming off the short week. Bills are the game before for the Ravens. So they'll
Mm,
they'll play the Bills and then go into that Thursday night against the Jags. And obviously you're at that point you're talking still early November. Sometimes things don't look like they do at the beginning of the season given injuries, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at, I think, I think a 6-3. We'll split those Ravens, and then the Titans, who I think, got a long way to go before they're actually truly competitive.
agreed. And okay, after that, you go to MetLife Stadium to take on the G-Men. And listen, the G-Men are gonna be much improved, John Harbaugh now,
Yeah,
but this isn't Bill Parcells, Phil Simms, Lawrence Taylor, okay? Okay.
yeah.
Alright, okay.
Not even the fossil-led Giants. All right, okay.
Tiki Barber, Danny Kanell.
Seahorn. Who can't forget Seahorn? Come
That's
on.
right. That's right. I think the Giants, they're gonna be feeling their way. I could see them kind of having a similar season to the Jets, honestly, in that 9-8 kinda range, right around 500. You're gonna have games where they look great and then some great games where they just lay an egg. So, I think the Jaguars win this game to go to 7-3, and, it sets them up nicely because then they come back home for the Titans, and I think they can get to 8-3 after that.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that. You know, right around Thanksgiving time.
Mhm.
I live in Jersey. My daughter's a Giants fan. So I'm going to be looking for the best possible tickets for that game. I think, to your point, Giants will be improved. I think New York fans in general for football have a lot to look forward to. Where I think your Jets are probably like an 8-9 type year. I think Giants are 6-7. Reason being really is the injuries from last year, neighbors. Neighbors is a little concerning where he is today with his knee. Things obviously are not progressing to, I think, where they want to be. Our boy Scattaboo, I don't know if he's, like, is he there and available or not? I don't know. But, if Neighbors struggles to fully recover, and I'm not saying like he's going to miss the season, of course, but if he's, this is still like more or less like a recovery year where he's still out there. I think that really is a setback for the Giants. So where I see them more competitive 6-7 type range. To your point, I think the Jags take the Giants there. They come back home, for the Titans, and like I said, I think there's still plenty of room for the Titans to grow. Of course, more I think we follow this one up with another win.
So you guys are 8-3 going into Chicago, December 6th. I think this is another tough spot because it's going to be probably very cold. It's going to be Chicago in December. The Bears, I think they're going to be maybe not as good as they were last year, but I do believe in them because I think the coach is the real deal. And, Caleb took some good steps last year. I think this is another tough spot. I think this is maybe comes down to a field goal at the end, but I see the Bears taking this one and you guys go to 8-4.
Yeah, I'm there with you, and we must know each other for a long time because with both their teams, we're tracking basically the same.
It's weird.
No, it's a tough spot, right? It's that game's going to have hype. I still think wherever the Bears are, they're going to be competitive. They're in the playoff hunt, divisional hunt. To your point, I would be really happy to, as a Bears fan, to see that Caleb looks like he can do a good job in leading the team. You have a coach who quickly is building his track record. Obviously, what an impact that with him no longer being with the Lions, right? Like that's there's the huge difference between the way that the Bears performed last year versus the Lions with that one person changing teams. So yeah, I would look at that, as an L right there. But I think, right, we follow up the next week against the Steelers on a Monday night game. I mean, there are some games I miss from the late 90s, early 2000s against the Steelers. So I loved when we were in the same division as the Steelers, and those games, late 90s, early 2000s, Jags Steelers were always fun
Yeah.
to me. So that one I look forward to. I know the Jags will look forward to. And to me, that's a game where we're going to get the win.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think you win that game at home, national TV. Think you guys are pumped up for that. It's hard to say what the Steelers are going to be. They're going to be a meddling team, 9-8 again, just like they were last year, I feel like. So yeah, I think you win this and you get to 9-4, and then you got to go to
Yep.
Houston.
Yep.
And then again, we've talked about it with Stroud. What is this team going to be? Like, are they the real deal? Like, I mean, this is probably a big year. I'm sure Texans fans are talking about it in terms of for the quarterback. Like, is this going to be your guy if he doesn't show up this year, especially down the stretch, which I felt like he was just, as the season went on, it just became worse and worse for him leading up to that playoff game in Foxborough. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting. But I feel like you guys usually split.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, I think if we look back to last year, this was another spot where just kick the freaking extra point, right? We're up all these points. Just kick the extra point. And this is a game where we led by a good amount last year and crumbled in the fourth quarter, which again was another one of those games, much like the Bengals last year, that took us essentially out of that number one seed. And it just drives me nuts. But I think we do have our challenges. And again, I think historically the Houston Jaguar games, have had their good battles, some ups and downs, but split is generally where we end up. So to me, I see the split this year.
Yeah. So we both are on the same page there. They go to 9-5 going into their final three. And honestly, pal, we can break these down individually, of course, but I can see him running the table here to end the season to get to 12-5.
Do you know how hyped I am about the Christmas weekend Sunday night game? I mean, like, look, it's obviously the world we live in. Nothing is cheap anymore. Really not cheap.
Yeah.
That is a game I genuinely want to go and see, like just to see the Jags playing in Dallas, holiday weekend, under
Be a
the
cool
under the bright
atmosphere.
lights.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll be a great atmosphere. But yeah, go ahead. How do you finish in this out?
Yeah, I think, like you said, national TV game there against the Cowboys, who are probably going to be fighting for their playoff lives. not that you guys will be fighting for your playoff lives. You'll be, I think, in a good spot at that point. But the Cowboys, I feel like they're always in this spot at the end of the season, like needing to win. And I feel like lately they haven't been good in prime time, Dallas. And I feel like, yeah, this is going to be a big opportunity for Cohen and Trevor to kind of show the world again on the national stage just how far they've come. And I see it not even being close, to be honest. I think it's one of those games where the Cowboys lay an egg, which we've seen them do so many times. And you come back home for the Commanders. I'm not sold on the quarterback there, man. I don't know what they're going to be. He obviously had a lot of promise in his first year, but I think,
Injuries.
yeah, of course, yeah, I know, and I
Isn't it
think,
wild, right? Like, if
yeah,
you think about RG3, all the world of talent, the
yeah,
same thing, this kid has a world of talent. It's
right.
like, is that gonna that how he's gonna be defined as, the injury bug?
I look at him and I just feel I look at and I see like kind of a frail, smaller frame quarterback. Like it's just hard, man. It's hard to sustain, the hits and the physicality that the position brings. Because you're so vulnerable most of the time, you know, in terms of if you're gonna stand there in the pocket, if you're gonna run out of the pocket, like, you don't really have a chance to protect yourself a lot of times. And yeah, and a smaller guy like that, it's gonna add up. So
Agreed, agreed.
we we both have them then, 11-5 going into the season finale, which you could have a flex game there. I mean, you don't know what that game's going to mean. Could the Colts be fighting for their playoff lives? Could this be for the division?
I mean, could be.
It's
I
possible.
don't it's possible, but, I think, right, when I look at that 3-game stretch, I do think they run the table there. To your point, if we just back up to the Cowboys for a moment, I mean, Dak is gonna be 33 next month. Like, Dak doesn't I don't see Dak as that guy like a
Yeah.
Rodgers Brady who's
Right.
holding up at that point. And the inconsistencies, to your point, I don't know where the Cowboys end up this year. Like, I'm not looking at that and would feel like, let's put it this way, if they were trying to fight to get out of last place towards the end of the year, like, I wouldn't be surprised. I just, again, I'm not sure that Jerry's ever been able to truly figure it out, which clearly he hasn't since, Jimmy Johnson walked out that door. Yeah, they picked up one other one, but,
Right.
realistically, they just have not been the same, over the last 3 plus decades. So, yeah, I like them in that game. You get that final home game right after the new year against the Commanders. I'm feeling good about that. To your point, I think who knows where, the Colts could be at that point at if they truly are. I mean, they generally play the Jags tough in Indianapolis.
So it could go either way because you guys might want to rest players, for that game. So
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
see it, you guys dropping it. So I think it could be 11-6, it could be 12-5, and then you set yourself up for a playoff run, like you said, pal. Like that's where the season is going to start, really, for this team. I mean, obviously that's a little hyperbole, but because the regular season is probably the most exciting in all the sports in terms of meaningful games. You get one game a week. It's not like baseball 162 or basketball or hockey. So, yeah, can this team take another step, win a playoff game, make a little run in an AFC that's really like, who do you point to? The Pats, like we said, we think they're going to take a big step back. Denver, I know how you feel about Denver. You've mentioned it
Yeah.
a few times. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's to
you
your
got to feel
point, right?
good.
Like,
You got to feel good.
yeah, I mean, I look at a 12-5 year, and I'm sure, yeah, to your point, rose-colored glasses. I love the Jags, but when you look at the AFC, you keep pointing, I think, to the Bills, and it's just like, right, like, why is this not happening? And even in the world we look at today, right? To me, they should be the favorite to get out of the AFC into the Super Bowl.
Are we
Mm.
forgetting about the Chiefs? Are we overlooking the Chiefs?
I don't think so. What I think the challenge is for the Chiefs is the pieces that are around Mahomes are not quite what they were a couple of years ago, right? I don't think there's that receiver that is going to scare you. And Kelsey, I mean, at some point, that dude's just living a different life now with his wife, and he's much older. right? Like he's at the end of his the road for him. Mahomes doesn't seem to be Brady like in terms of how he's going to take care of his body now as he's getting a little bit older, and you see I think a little bit more of some of the injuries piling up over the last couple of years, and who knows, like coming into this year, how healthy is he going to be with his knee, right? So I'm not saying like they're not going to scare anybody or can't win games, but this is not like where we were 2-3 years ago, where you look at them, I think, as at the very top of the AFC. So I think there is a little bit of step back offensively for them. Again, the same thing as Lamar gets on in his career, new coaching staff. I'm not sure, in the big spot, are they truly scaring anybody? Do you walk into that game where you feel like you can't win? Can these other teams step up? But when I look around, I would look at the AFC and be like, if the Bills can't get there again this year, like what the hell? Like as again, somebody who spent, good chunk of my younger years, 8 to 18 in Buffalo, seeing, the commitment by that fan base. They're walking into a beautiful new stadium this year. The stadium is gorgeous. It's set up for them and their fan base, right? That place, the way it's built, is going to be
Oh, yeah.
loud, obnoxious, especially, for you if you're the road team trying to, run your offense. I don't know, man. I don't. I don't know how you walk away and can't say like, look, the Bills are clear cut the team that should get out of the AFC when you look at it versus the rest of the conference.
Right. But for your team, the good thing is you're probably not gonna have to play in your path to the Super Bowl, you're not gonna have to go through, let's say, the Chiefs, Bills, and Denver. Likely, you're gonna have to go be one of them, the way the playoffs are kinda set up usually. So, that is the good thing about it for you guys, and, you proved last year you were right there, had a chance to really win that game, and we were not gonna rehash it, pal. We're not gonna rehash it right now. I know I
It
know how you
was
feel.
I mean, in the postseason last year, that definitely was, one of the best games in the
Oh,
postseason
yeah.
last year. It was just unfortunate. It was, the wild card round, the way it
Yeah.
worked out. But it is what it is too, right? So yeah, it would be interesting, if we found ourselves in a position, as an example, like you're playing an AFC Championship game in Buffalo. That man, that's this year, that's going to be, I think, would be a tough one. That stadium, I think, is going to be a nice home field advantage for the Bills. I mean, there's always been that advantage postseason in Buffalo, except for that one time, like back in like when '96, when the Jags went in there and beat them.
Yeah.
Outside of that, they do have a pretty good advantage. But I think that the way that new stadium sets up for them, I think it's as ideal of a build out construction as you could want for your NFL team.
All right, pal. Now that we've broken down our football team schedules, let's shift and finish up with our beloved baseball team, the New York Mets, who are 2-0 since yours truly put out the meme that they have the same exact record as they do this year that they did to the same point in 2024.
Mhm.
Grimace, OMG, all that. And alls I did was lay out the question. If you're looking for something positive to hang on to, there it is. There it is right there. Now, granted, I don't believe in these players like I believed in the core we had in 2024 with our guys. It's just a different squad now. And even when they win games now, it's like a shit show just to get to the W. Like you don't even understand how they actually got to win if you watched the game last night against the Marlins. Like 5 inning Freddie only went 4 1/3 or whatever it was. They're making errors. And then just somehow they found a way to win. So I just wanted to put that out there because, it's easy to be negative and down and rightfully so, because there hasn't been a lot to be happy about this season from a fan perspective. It's been kind of shitty, losing all the guys that we've loved and, bringing in these guys and a lot of them are hurt and just underperforming and all that. So I think if you want to hang on to that, you can. But I'll ask you, where are you? Where are you right now mentally with this team? Because, like we said at the beginning, it's still technically only May, and I can't believe it. But I mean, I want to have something to watch, even if we know they're not going to be a postseason team. Just don't go in the tank here.
Yeah, and I don't think it would be intentional, right? To your point, the injuries have piled up, right? Maybe it's good that Senga is injured, right? He's struggling in Syracuse right now, which I try not to get too worked up about stats in AAA because for somebody like him or even like Jonah Tong when he was back in Syracuse, like it's not uncommon to be working on certain pitches where you're just throwing them to be throwing them just so again, you got to get the live work. So, sometimes I'm not going to be, but I don't panic. But, Senga has been a disaster. So, like, even if he comes back, Holmes is not coming back until like end of August, if all works out well. We're still going to have to deal with the Lindor piece, right? I think he's scheduled somewhere, I think mid June
Yeah.
to, supposedly come back. But I
I think
mean,
that's an off-season thing, though, don't you think?
as far as which
Just
part?
figuring that out with Lindor and if he's gonna be a part of it going forward.
I I yes, but, right, we're gonna be potentially walking into a lockout, right? Right, 'cause the seal if we're talking about, like, the end of the year, get to December 1st, where I think the agreement expires, I don't think we're going to get the cap, right? That's where we were back in the '90s, and, I do think you could get the floor up. I guess point being is there's a very high chance of a lockout next year. There's a very high chance that we're going to miss baseball games. Lindor is going to be 32. It's been rough last year, this year. Like, what is our incentive? And I know he's been a really good Met for us. I think we would all turn back the clock to 2 years ago before Soto comes in, and right. Clearly, there were shifts last year in the locker room. I don't know how you hold on to him with some of these things that are out there looming, his age, his value where it is versus, diminishing returns if we continue to hold him. So for me, I know what you're saying. You'd hate to see them tank, but I mean, I'd rather see Jonah pitch. I'd rather see Clifford come up and play first base for us. I've enjoyed watching what I think, what could be with AJ Ewing and
Yeah, the
Benj.
baby Mets.
Yeah, the baby Mets, and I think that's okay, right? Like,
Yeah.
obviously my concern is don't ruin McLean. Please don't do that.
Jeez.
But we don't have the pen, we don't have the fielding, and we certainly don't have enough hitting for us to be like 81 and 81 seems like a
Oh,
steep
man.
hill for us to climb at this point. So I don't see any issue of getting rid of a 4 2/3 Peralta just because we gave away a couple prospects for him before the trade deadline here. I don't have an issue if Lindor comes back and looks good for us to try to figure out if we can move on from him just because of the things that set up. And unfortunate, like the Holmes thing sucks because we could have traded him probably for good value too.
Yeah.
And the reality is, again, I don't believe we'll get the cap, but if we did,
Right.
we'd be screwed.
Yes.
So
That Holmes was maybe David Stern's only good move, signing him to be a starter. Like,
yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, what else? Really? When you think about it, he kind of walked into the team with Lindor and Alonso. So, I mean, what other real good moves are you giving him credit for? It's hard to find
I mean,
anything.
the dude walks in the door and takes off like 7 miles per hour Mania's fastball. I mean, come on, the guy's killing us. And realistically, I hate to see Mendoza in the position to lose like 105 games and have that like essentially on his resume. And I know folks will be able to at some point look beyond it, but it would be a lot better for Mendoza. I think it just in the perspective of allowing him to walk, collect the rest of his money for the rest of this year. I know I said this before, let him find a bench coach job and, let him get back to a role somewhere else where it might be better off for him. So to me, I think you got to spare him a little bit and just help the guy out. He doesn't deserve this. And realistically, I would feel better trading. And again, like I really enjoy Lindor as a Met, but I don't think it makes sense with where his age is and with the lockout coming to put ourselves in a bad place. So let's
Yeah,
trade some of these pieces and truly rebuild. And we have plenty of money to sign players as we go.
I hear you, pal. I hear you, pal. I guess maybe I'm just not at the point yet. I know we talked about it earlier in the year about would you sign up for the tank season if we get everything we want in terms of cleaning house and kind of restarting everything? But I still want to see like what the plan is. Obviously we can't talk to Stearns unless maybe he comes on with us. Have a few things to ask him. But what is the plan? And then I could like determine, okay, where is Lindor? Does he fit into it? Because yeah, are you going with the youth movement? Which it looks like. Is Uncle Stevie gonna cut bait with the higher priced players, mid-season or obviously trade deadline or after this season? Are you gonna load up again? What do you what is the plan? That's what I wanna know.
Y
What is the plan?
yeah, and I obviously, right, over these coming weeks, things will unfold and kinda give us a bit of that direction. I mean, our owner in comparison to the other owners is just filthy rich. But maybe at the end of the day, that won't matter because they'll figure out how to get a cap in place. And that might be the thing, right? Like baseball, the owners would be very dumb to allow us to lose time come next year. It can't, they couldn't afford the repeat of 1994 because again, they saw what happened and it took them 3 decades to get to maybe the second spot in American sports, right?
Right.
And it's taken all of the 3 decades to get back there, and you're gonna risk it. So maybe there is the writing on the wall within the owners group to say, "Hey, look, we're gonna bring down this number." And, the process of going through the youth movement, dumping some salary here before the trade deadline allows the Mets to work their way back under the number, build up some of the young kids, add those free agent pieces. I don't know if they would settle on the number I think proposed at 247. I think that's a little too low. I think if that number comes up a little bit, more likely to make it a smoother transition. But maybe that is what's happening behind the scenes is the writing is on the wall that they see it and they could take that route. I know I'm throwing a bunch of nonsense against the wall, hoping it sticks that, at some point, as a Mets fan, to your point, is there a real plan? And if the
Yeah.
strategy is youth, bring some other pieces back, open up our wallet a little bit to bring, to sign a couple Moneyball type players. Maybe
Yeah.
that's where Stearns could find himself to be a little bit more successful. But yeah, it's been a shit show the last, these 2 seasons, basically 25, 26.
If the owner doesn't see the error of his ways by hiring this GM, like, do we have any confidence that like he's gonna turn around and in terms of like this owner knows what he's doing? You know what I mean? Like, is this just a fun thing for him owning the Mets, like making money, building this casino now out there and all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I know he was quote unquote a Mets fan and he is a Mets fan, but like, I don't know, man. I question it. I question it based on the moves.
Yeah. I mean, I would think a guy of his wealth is very competitive. I'm sure his ego is disgustingly large. So I can't imagine him being comfortable with the losses. And then again, like whatever he's spending out on pay, it doesn't matter to him. He's like so ridiculously rich, it doesn't matter. So I do think he'll want to figure out. I think what he could do is learn from shockingly. You ready? Shockingly, he could learn from Dolan,
Okay. Yeah.
get
Yeah.
the right guy,
Right.
and because again, right? Stearns is what is an analytics guy, and much like our new favorite head coach of the Cavaliers. What was his comment? Analytically, they did what? They won
We've
first, like two.
won two of the first three games or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that is the problem with sports is
Yes.
that thinking has come in and not recognizing that people do rise to the occasion, and that's what makes like the human spirit great. People are able to step up. They're able to do things that in moments where people don't expect it, make sports great. And you can't always or you can't overlook grit, perseverance, that drive, competitive nature to win. And I think a little bit of, right, that's what is missing in analytics to me. It's like what could be missing in our future of AI that, there's that human element that is immensely important. Like even like the dumb ABS. I understand like it helps with the right down the middle, completely blown call. But I seen right Soto and like it was a ball, but like by that
Yeah.
like less than a tenth of an inch, And like, come on, right? Like there's a little bit, I think, of the appreciation for what makes the game great that gets lost when we are only about data analytics as opposed to, the heart that somebody has to win and compete and be successful. So I'll
Yeah.
get off that soapbox.
And human error. I mean, it's honestly always been a part of baseball in terms of like
Well,
when
yeah,
you talk about, umpiring and balls and strikes and safe and out and all those kind of calls. Well, that's where we are with our baseball team.
yeah, yeah.
It's
We're bad. We're
we're
not
not a good
good.
team. We had a little glimmer of hope there, in the Subway Series. We're thinking, okay, maybe we're going to turn a corner here and get on a little bit of a run. But that did not work out. And yeah, there's so much baseball left to be played this season. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's too many injuries. I mean, there's too many injuries. We're playing either young guys who are learning the game at this level, or throwing out some of those bodies that've been around, like that big home run we got of Melendez last night, right? Like we have these guys out there. It just you can't get around the fact that we don't trust most of the starting rotation. We don't trust the back of the bullpen. We don't trust our fielding, and we can't hit the ball consistently at all. None of that says we're gonna figure out how to get this. And at the end of the day, right? Like even if we were competitive enough to like think like we have an outside chance, we're still maybe like you get down to the stretch, we're 3 or 4 games out of a wild card spot. What are we gonna do like once we get to the postseason with that type of team? Like to me, we feel like we're miles away from being a competitive ball club that can really compete for a division, a pennant. I just much rather see us reset it at this point, and I think there's beauty in allowing some of the youth play and get some of that excitement as a fan base again. AJ was a good injection of enjoyment into the Mets season when he entered the lineup. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting. I think there's a lot of work for us to rebuild this, and I don't want to waste the opportunity since it's right in front of us.
So before we close today, I just want to throw out a quick reminder that this episode is brought to you by Dr. Arnie Oliveira and the Empowerment Counseling Center. We joke that this show is kind of like fan therapy because sports is a roller coaster, but real therapy can change lives. And Dr. Arnie has been helping individuals, couples, and families navigate life's toughest challenges and create lasting positive change. So if you or someone you know needs help, definitely have them reach out to Dr. Arnie at 407-775-2949. And pal, this week, we learned of the passing of Claude Lemieux, obviously great hockey player. He was a great devil. And I know based on what you've went through in your life and how much therapy has played a role, this has had to have been, a tough week for you. Being that it was a guy that you obviously grew up watching, seeing had a lot of success with your team. How are you feeling right now about this whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw it, of course, I'm sure like a lot of people, just shock. At 60, he's no longer with us, right? That's, the world we live in. 60 feels like you still have a good amount of time, but, things do happen. But then, of course, as more news came out, we've come to learn how he passed away, and it was, suicide. And the reality is, life is hard, and there are a lot of challenges that we all go through. And, when I think about where I was, you know, 15 plus years ago in my life, I just had lost a big part of my life and experience overnight, just truly went away. And I struggled for a long time of trying to figure out how to mentally put my life back on track. And I understand the thoughts that people do have, that either contemplate suicide or go through with suicide. I think sometimes for those who don't experience those type of feelings, thoughts, you don't understand how bad of a place that person might be in mentally, that's an option, right? Like I think as humans innately, we're built to do what we can to survive. But when you're at that point, overriding that piece in your brain that my death is the best option out of what I'm feeling, it's really scary. And I feel for all those folks. I've been in that position where I've contemplated suicide. Some of my regrets of early days post the tragedy I went through becoming a gun owner. probably wasn't the best choice. Sometimes I would look at that gun very, very closely and, have some, pretty terrible thoughts. But, and having to continue to work through the challenges and facing those things that have you in that place, is important, right? It's important the people around you support you. You have those close friends you can go to and support you, which, you, Pat, and Arnie, and others in Orlando were very supportive and helped me out a lot through those early days as I worked through my challenges. But, again, I think sometimes for those who haven't had those experiences, for those who contemplate or commit suicide, don't really fully appreciate where those people are. And sometimes I've heard folks say, it's selfish to do something like that. And, I don't think that. I just know like where they are and how bad it hurts that it becomes the last resort to make it all better. And, like I said, given, that we have Dr. Oliveira as one of our sponsors, I'm an advocate for mental health. I think it's important for all of us to be able to find the right person to help us work through those challenges. And I'm a big believer, again, in therapy and working through the pain, the trauma, and sometimes you can learn a lot of really good things about yourself and who you are and understand yourself in a better way that I think brings some more happiness to your life and allows you to experience life in a different way in ways maybe you didn't think were possible. So my biggest advice for those who are struggling, those who are in that place, those who've experienced those tragedies in life, you just have to figure out how to keep the light within you going because you don't know what the next day is going to bring you. And if you keep just grinding away, you can get through that phase of those feelings, that depression, and find that life you want. And one of the things that I could look back on that I'm most proud of over the last 15 plus years is I didn't give up. And yes, maybe life is not perfect. It's never going to be. But when I look back at what I went through to where I am today, I'm very grateful for all the challenges that I've experienced. Of course, we all wish for different outcomes at times, but I couldn't have done it without the right support system, but I couldn't have really done it out without having that resource to go to in terms of therapy and working through the pain, the trauma, to give myself a chance to have a good life and still get the most out of my time here on earth. So I will always be grateful for those who help the community. Um, and I always be grateful for people like Arnie who do wonderful things to help support others in turning their life around and giving them opportunity and hope to live a better life. And, like I said, I just would implore folks to just keep going and keep moving forward and give yourself a chance to have the life you want.
We're all very thankful, pal, that you didn't give up, man, and you kept fighting. I know we all feel like that. So if anyone out there needs help, definitely reach out to Dr. Arnie. He offers free consultation, 407-775-2949. We did it again, pal. Another great
Yes, we
episode.
did.
Thank you for sharing your story. And we will be back and catch you guys next time on the Unqualified podcast. For Brendan, I'm Pat. Talk to you soon.